Commander Vexhai stood on the bridge of the massive Zephyrian dreadnought Eternal Dominion. His four arms crossed behind his back as he gazed through the viewing portal at the blue marble suspended in the darkness ahead. Earth, the humans called it. Such a simple name for what they considered their precious homeworld. The irony wasn't lost on him that this insignificant ball of rock and water was about to become another footnote in the Zephyrian Empire's endless catalog of conquered worlds. "Sir, we're receiving multiple transmissions from the human vessels," reported Lieutenant Kixta from her station, her tentacled fingers dancing across holographic controls. They appear to be attempting some form of communication. Vexhai's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. "Let me hear these primitive bleeding sounds they call language." The bridge speakers crackled to life, filling the command center with voices speaking in various human languages. English, Mandarin, Spanish, Russian, Arabic, a cacophony of desperate pleas and warnings that the universal translators quickly converted into comprehensible Zephyrian speech. Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Force. You are entering Sovereign Earth space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The bridge erupted in what could only be described as laughter, though the sound was more like a collection of chittering, clicking, and gurgling noises that would have terrified most species. Vexhai's crew found the humans' formal military protocol absolutely hilarious. Here they were, facing a fleet of ships that could glass their entire planet within hours, and they were demanding identification and intentions as if they had any leverage whatsoever. Sovereign space. We Subcommander Thilke, his breathing apparatus whistling with mirth. "Did you hear that, Commander?" They claim sovereignty over this microscopic system, as if they're a real civilization. Vexhai activated the communication array with a casual gesture. "Human vessels. This is Commander Vexhai of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. We claim this system and all its resources in the name of the Eternal Empire. You will surrender immediately, or we will demonstrate why resistance is futile." There was a pause before Admiral Chen's voice returned, now carrying an edge of steel that impressed absolutely no one on the Zephyrian bridge. "Commander Vexhai, humanity does not surrender. We've never surrendered to anyone, and we're not about to start with you. If you want our world, you'll have to take it." The laughter this time was even louder. Several junior officers had to steady themselves against their stations as they convulsed with mirth. The idea that these humans, who had barely managed to achieve faster-than-light travel a few decades ago, would dare to threaten the might of the Zephyrian Empire was beyond absurd. "Scan their fleet," Vexhai ordered, wiping moisture from his compound eyes. "Let's see what these brave little mammals have brought to their own funeral." The tactical display materialized in the center of the bridge, showing the disposition of human forces. What they saw only increased their amusement. The human fleet consisted of roughly 200 vessels of various sizes, from massive dreadnoughts that looked impressive until you compared them to Zephyrian ships, down to small fighters that seemed to be constructed from welded metal plates and held together with what appeared to be primitive chemical propulsion systems. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, Grixmole, his voice strained with suppressed laughter. "Their largest ships measure approximately 800 meters in length. Their armor appears to be composed of steel alloys with some form of reactive plating. Weapons seem to be primarily kinetic projectiles and what our sensors identify as primitive nuclear warheads." "Nuclear warheads?" Vexhai's voice rose an octave. "They're still using nuclear fission? By the eternal void, these creatures are still in their technological infancy." The bridge crew was now in full hysterics. Nuclear weapons were something most civilizations abandoned shortly after achieving spaceflight, recognizing them as crude and inefficient compared to plasma cannons, antimatter missiles, and quantum disruptors. It was like bringing a stone axe to fight someone wielding a molecular disintegrator. "And their fighters, sir," Grixmole continued, tears streaming down his chitinous face, "appear to be single-pilot craft with no visible energy shielding. They're using what looks like chemically propelled projectiles and small fusion rockets for propulsion." "Show me," Vexhai commanded, and the display zoomed in on one of the human fighter squadrons. What they saw defied all logic and tactical sense. The human fighters were indeed small, cramped-looking vessels with weapons that belonged in a museum. But What struck the Zephyrians as particularly amusing was the behavior of the human pilots. Through their advanced sensors, they could see inside the cockpits, where human beings sat encased in bulky pressure suits and primitive helmets, their hands gripping what appeared to be manual controls. They're flying those death traps manually. Lieutenant Kixta gasped. No AI assistance, no neural links, no quantum processors. They're actually using their organic brains to calculate trajectories and targeting solutions. This revelation sent the bridge into fresh waves of laughter. Every civilized species had moved beyond manual control of spacecraft millennia ago. The idea of using organic reflexes and biological computation for space combat was not just primitive, it was suicidal. Sir, came another voice from the communication station. We're intercepting transmissions between their fighter pilots. Would you like to hear them? By all means, Vexai said, settling into his command throne. Let's listen to their final words. The speakers filled with chatter between human pilots, their voices calm and professional despite facing impossible odds. The universal translators worked overtime to convey not just words, but emotional undertones. Eagle Squadron, this is Eagle One. Form up on me and remember your training. We've drilled for this scenario 1,000 times. Copy, Eagle One. Just like The Sims, right? Not quite, Eagle 7. The Sims didn't have quite this many targets. More targets just means more opportunities for glory, 7. Let's show these squid heads what human engineering can do. The casual banter and apparent fearlessness of the human pilots only added to the Zephyrians' amusement. These creatures were actually joking in the face of certain death. It was either remarkably brave or remarkably stupid, and the Zephyrians were betting on the latter. Their largest warship is hailing us again, reported the communications officer. Put it through. I want to hear more of this comedy. Admiral Chen's voice returned, now broadcasting on an open channel that all ships in both fleets could hear. All human vessels, this is Admiral Chen. Today we face an enemy that believes technology alone makes them superior. They look at our ships and see primitive metal. They look at our weapons and see obsolete tools. They look at us and see inferior beings. Vexai nodded along with her words. So far, the human was being remarkably accurate in her assessment. But they don't understand what makes humanity dangerous, Chen continued. It's not our technology. It's not our weapons. It's not even our numbers. What makes us dangerous is that we refuse to accept defeat. We've been fighting against impossible odds since we first stood upright and decided the universe owed us nothing but would give us everything if we were willing to take it. The Zephyrian crew exchanged glances. The human speech was becoming less amusing and more puzzling. There was something in her voice, a certainty that seemed completely disconnected from her fleet's obvious tactical disadvantage. Every ship in this fleet represents humanity's greatest achievement, Chen announced. Not because of the technology, but because of the people inside them. Men and women who volunteered to stand between their home and an alien invasion, knowing they were outgunned, outnumbered, and outclassed. They're here anyway, because that's what humans do. Touching, Vexheim muttered, though something about the human admiral's words was beginning to disturb him in a way he couldn't quite identify. So to our alien visitors, I say this. You've made one critical error in your calculations. You've assumed that superior technology automatically equals victory. You've forgotten that wars aren't won by ships or weapons or even tactics. They're won by the will to keep fighting when everything else has failed. The transmission ended, and the bridge fell silent for a moment before erupting in fresh laughter. The will to keep fighting. Felake wheezed, as if determination can stop a plasma lance or quantum torpedo. Sir, Grixmol reported, our long-range sensors are detecting something unusual about the human fleet's formation. They're not adopting any recognized defensive posture. Instead, they appear to be spreading out in what looks like an attack formation. This news brought more laughter. The idea that the humans were planning to attack rather than defend was beyond ridiculous. They're actually going to charge us, Vexai said in wonder. These insane creatures are actually planning to attack a superior force. Sir, we're receiving a tactical data burst from their flagship. They're sharing targeting information with their entire fleet. Let me see their targeting solutions, Vexai commanded. The display showed what the humans were planning, and it was so tactically unsound that several officers had to sit down to avoid falling over from laughter. The human plan appeared to involve sending their fighters in first to engage the Zephyrian fleet directly, followed by their larger ships in what could only be described as a frontal assault. "They're going to fly straight at us," Grixmole managed between fits of laughter. "No flanking maneuvers, no deception, no clavier tactiques. Just a straight-line charge into our weapons range. It's not even suicide," Thalake observed. "Suicide implies they might accomplish something with their deaths. This is just wasteful." Vexai was about to respond when his sensor operator called out urgently. "Sir, the human fighters are beginning their attack run. They're accelerating toward our forward screening elements." The main display switched to a tactical view showing dozens of human fighters streaking toward the Zephyrian fleet's outer perimeter. Their approach was indeed direct and unsophisticated, exactly what the Zephyrians expected from primitive minds using primitive technology. "Weapons free," Vexai ordered casually. "Let's put these creatures out of their misery quickly and get on with claiming their planet." The forward Zephyrian cruisers opened fire with plasma cannons and particle beams, creating a wall of deadly energy between themselves and the approaching human fighters. It should have been a massacre. The human craft should have been vaporized instantly by weapons designed to destroy much larger and more heavily armored targets. Instead, something impossible happened. The human fighters scattered like a flock of birds, each one moving in an apparently random direction that somehow managed to thread between the incoming weapons' fire. They rolled, dove, climbed, and twisted in patterns that no computer could have calculated, no AI could have predicted, and no civilized pilot would have attempted. "How are they doing that?" Hixtha whispered, her earlier amusement forgotten as she watched the tactical display in growing confusion. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, his voice tight with concentration, "I'm reading something impossible from the human fighters. Their pilots are pulling maneuvers that should kill them. The G-forces alone should cause catastrophic biological failure." "Explain," Vexai demanded, his own amusement beginning to fade. "They're pulling sustained turns at forces exceeding 15 standard gravities, sir. No organic being should be able to survive that, let alone remain conscious and functional." On the display, the human fighters continued their impossible dance through the Zephyrian weapons fire. Not only were they surviving the deadly barrage, but they were actually accelerating into it, using the chaos of the energy weapons as cover for their advance. "Their pilots should be dead," Thalake said flatly. "The forces they're experiencing should liquefy their internal organs." But the humans weren't dead. They were very much alive and getting closer with every passing second. As the Zephyrian officers watched in growing alarm, the first wave of human fighters broke through their defensive fire and began engaging their outer ships at point-blank range. What happened next defied everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about space combat. The human fighters, instead of using their primitive projectile weapons from a safe distance, flew directly into the weapon ports of the Zephyrian vessels and fired their nuclear warheads at ranges measured in meters rather than kilometers. "They're ramming our ships," someone screamed. "No," Grixmole corrected, his voice filled with a new kind of respect. "They're using our size against us. They're too small and fast for our targeting systems to track at close range, so they're getting inside our defensive perimeter and attacking our weak points." The tactical display showed Zephyrian cruiser after cruiser falling victim to the human fighter attack. The small craft were like insects attacking a giant, but insects that carried nuclear stingers and weren't afraid to die. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving damage reports from the forward screening force. The humans are targeting our weapons systems specifically. They're not trying to destroy our ships. They're trying to disable them." This revelation sent a chill through the bridge. It meant the humans had studied Zephyrian ship designs and identified their weak points. It meant this wasn't a desperate last stand by primitives, but a carefully planned assault by an enemy that had done its homework. "How many fighters have we destroyed?" Vexai demanded. "Approximately 12%, sir." 12%? "We've been firing at them for 10 minutes with enough firepower to glass a continent." "Yes, sir, but they're not fighting like any enemy we've encountered before. They're not trying to win through superior firepower or technology. They're using speed, unpredictability, and what appears to be calculated recklessness to achieve tactical objectives. The laughter on the bridge had died completely now, replaced by a growing sense of unease. What had started as an amusing diversion was becoming something entirely different. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning. And somewhere in the back of every Zephyrian mind, a terrible thought was beginning to take root. If they were wrong about human fighters, what else might they be wrong about? The second wave of human fighters approached the Zephyrian fleet with the same reckless determination as the first, but Commander Vexhai noticed something different this time. The humans had modified their tactics based on what they'd learned from the initial engagement. Instead of scattered individual attacks, they were now flying in coordinated formations that seemed to anticipate exactly where the Zephyrian weapons would fire. "Sir," Lieutenant Kix reported, her voice carrying a note of professional concern that hadn't been there an hour ago. "The human fighters are demonstrating tactical adaptation that exceeds our predictive models. They're learning faster than our combat algorithms can compensate." Vexhai studied the tactical display with growing unease. The human fighters were indeed adapting, but it was more than simple tactical adjustment. They were displaying a kind of intuitive understanding of three-dimensional space combat that shouldn't have been possible for a species so new to interstellar warfare. "Show me the pilot biometrics again," he ordered. The display shifted to show internal views of human fighter cockpits, and what Vexhai saw there made his blood run cold. The human pilots weren't just surviving the impossible G-forces they were pulling, they were functioning at peak efficiency. Their heart rates were elevated but stable. Their reaction times were actually improving under stress, and, most disturbing of all, they showed signs of what could only be described as enjoyment. "They're having fun," Subcommander Thalake whispered in disbelief. "Look at their facial expressions. These insane creatures are actually enjoying this." It was true. Despite facing overwhelming odds and performing maneuvers that should have been lethal, the human pilots showed expressions of intense concentration mixed with what could only be called predatory satisfaction. They weren't fighting desperately for survival. They were hunting. "Eagle 2, you've got 3 bogeys on your 6, came a voice over the intercepted communications. "Copy, Eagle Leader. Watch this." On the display, they watched as the human pilot designated Eagle 2 performed a maneuver that violated several laws of physics as the Zephyrians understood them. The fighter spun end over end while simultaneously executing a spiral dive, passing through a gap between 3 Zephyrian plasma bolts that was smaller than the fighter itself, then rolled inverted and fired a nuclear torpedo directly into the engine intake of a pursuing Zephyrian interceptor. The explosion that followed vaporized the Zephyrian craft and sent debris sleeting across the formation, damaging 2 additional ships. "Scratch 1 squid," Eagle 2 reported calmly. "That's number 4 for me today. Anyone else keeping score?" "Focus on the mission, too," Eagle Leader replied, but there was approval in his voice. "We're not here for personal glory. Speak for yourself, boss. My kids are watching this on the feeds back home. I want to give them something to brag about at school." The casual conversation between life and death combat maneuvers was unsettling enough, but what truly disturbed the Zephyrians was the implication behind the words. These humans were fighting not just for survival, but for the pride of their offspring. They were turning warfare into a performance for their families. "Sir," the tactical officer called out urgently, "the human capital ships are beginning their approach. They're maintaining formation, but, sir, their configuration doesn't match any known battle doctrine." Vexhai turned his attention to the larger human vessels, and what he saw there was equally puzzling. The human dreadnoughts and cruisers were advancing in a formation that seemed to prioritize protection of smaller vessels rather than maximizing their own firepower. It was as if they considered their escort ships and support craft to be more valuable than their primary weapons platforms. "They're using their largest ships as shields," Grixmol observed. "They're positioning their dreadnoughts to absorb our fire while their smaller vessels advance under cover. That's tactically insane," Thalake protested. "You never risk your primary assets to protect secondary ones. It goes against every principle of fleet engagement." But as they watched, it became clear that the human tactic, while unconventional, was proving effective. The Zephyrian fleet had been designed to engage enemy capital ships in long-range duels, where superior technology would guarantee victory. They hadn't anticipated an enemy that would sacrifice their most powerful vessels to ensure the survival of their weakest ones. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the human flagship," the communications officer reported. "Put it through. Maybe they're finally ready to discuss surrender terms." But Admiral Chin's voice, when it came through the speakers, carried no hint of defeat. If anything, she sounded more confident than before. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Chun. Phase 1 is complete. Our fighters have successfully disabled or destroyed 30% of the enemy's forward screening force. Casualties are within acceptable parameters. We are now proceeding to Phase 2. Phase 2, Vexai muttered. They actually planned this engagement in phases? Impossible. Eagle Squadron, Wolf Pack, and Falcon Wing, you are cleared for deep penetration strikes. Target priority is enemy command and control systems. Remember, we need their command ships intact for Phase 3. The mention of a Phase 3 sent a chill through the Zephyrian bridge. Not only had the humans planned this battle in advance, they were executing their plan with precision despite the apparent chaos of their tactics. "Sir," Kixtha reported, "long-range sensors are detecting additional human vessels approaching from multiple vectors. They appear to be, sir, they're coming from everywhere." The tactical display expanded to show the full scope of what was happening, and Vexai felt his confidence finally begin to crack. The human fleet they had been engaging wasn't the entire human force. It was just the opening act. From the asteroid belt came mining ships converted to missile platforms. From the outer planets came cargo haulers bristling with improvised weapons. From hidden positions throughout the system came vessels that defied easy classification, each one unique, but clearly purpose-built for this specific engagement. They turned their entire civilian fleet into a military force, Thalake breathed. Every ship in their system is participating in this battle. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the human homeworld itself. They're launching something big." The display showed Earth's surface, where massive installations were powering up with energy readings that made the Zephyrian ships look like toys in comparison. Whatever the humans had built on their planet's surface, it was drawing power from what appeared to be their entire planetary grid. "What are they doing down there?" "Vethai demandet." His answer came in the form of a transmission from Admiral Chun, broadcast on all frequencies so that both fleets could hear it clearly. "Zephyrian fleet, this is Admiral Chun. You seem surprised by our resistance. Allow me to explain something about humanity that your intelligence gathering apparently missed. We are not a species that accepts defeat gracefully. When threatened, we don't just fight back, we fight back with everything we have." The main display shifted to show a view of Earth's surface, where massive railgun installations were emerging from camouflage positions. The weapons were enormous, each one the size of a skyscraper, and there were dozens of them spread across the planet's surface. "Those guns," Chin continued, "are planetary defense cannons capable of accelerating projectiles to 15% of light speed. They've been under construction since we first detected your scout ships 3 years ago. We've been preparing for this day. 3 years. They've known about us for 3 years, and said nothing. The projectiles they fire," Chin's voice continued relentlessly, "are not conventional warheads. They're what we call kinetic kill vehicles, solid metal rods weighing several tons each. At the velocities our guns can achieve, each projectile carries the destructive force of a small nuclear weapon, but without the electromagnetic pulse or radiation signature." The implications of this revelation hit the Zephyrian command staff like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just prepared for their arrival. They had specifically designed weapons to counter Zephyrian defensive systems. Energy shields that could deflect plasma and particle beams would be useless against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. "Sir," the tactical officer reported in a voice that had lost all trace of its earlier amusement, "those planetary guns are targeting our fleet. Time to impact, if they fire, approximately 14 minutes at current range. All ships, evasive maneuvers." Vexai ordered. "Maximum acceleration, random vectors." But even as he gave the order, he realized the tactical impossibility of the situation. The Zephyrian fleet was massive and powerful, but it was also slow and cumbersome. Ships designed for long-range bombardment weren't built for rapid maneuvering. especially not with the precision required to avoid relativistic projectiles. Sir, came another urgent report. The human fighter squadrons are moving to intercept our evasion attempts. They're positioning themselves to herd us into the firing solutions of their planetary guns. Vexhai watched in growing horror as the human fighters, those same primitive craft they had been mocking an hour ago, began executing a complex three-dimensional maneuver that was clearly designed to limit the Zephyrian fleet's escape options. Every time a Zephyrian ship tried to break free from the engagement zone, human fighters would swarm it, not necessarily to destroy it, but to force it back into the predetermined kill zone. They're not trying to win a space battle, he realized aloud. They're herding us into position for a planetary bombardment. Sir, incoming transmission from the human admiral again. Put it through. Commander Vexhai, I want you to understand what's about to happen. In 10 minutes, our planetary defense system will fire. Each gun will launch a salvo of 12 projectiles. That's over 400 kinetic kill vehicles targeted at your fleet. At the velocity they'll be traveling, your shields won't stop them, your armor won't deflect them, and your point defense systems won't have time to intercept them. The bridge had fallen completely silent now, all traces of the earlier mockery and laughter forgotten. However, Chun continued, I'm prepared to offer you an alternative. Surrender now, and I guarantee safe passage for your crews. Your ships will be confiscated, but your people will be returned to Zephyrian space unharmed. They want us to surrender, Kixtha said numbly. The primitive humans want the mighty Zephyrian Empire to surrender to them. Vexhai studied the tactical display, trying to find any option that didn't end in the complete destruction of his fleet. The human fighters had them boxed in, their capital ships were closing from multiple directions, and those planetary guns were almost ready to fire. Worse yet, he was beginning to suspect that this entire engagement had been choreographed from the beginning, designed to maneuver the Zephyrian fleet into exactly this position. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving urgent transmissions from our forward ships. They're reporting that human boarders are attempting to access their systems. Boarders? How is that possible? The human fighters, sir, some of them weren't carrying weapons. They were carrying boarding pods. They've been attaching to our ships during the combat engagement. The display zoomed in on one of the damaged Zephyrian cruisers, and, sure enough, there were small human craft attached to its hull like parasites. As they watched, sections of the cruiser's armor were being cut away by what appeared to be plasma torches, allowing access to the ship's interior. What are they doing in there? Telak Jimandit. The answer came from the cruiser's captain over the fleet communication network. They're not trying to capture the ship, he reported in confusion. They're accessing our computer systems. They're downloading our tactical databases. A chill ran down Vexhai's spine as he realized what the humans were doing. They weren't just fighting a battle, they were gathering intelligence. Every Zephyrian ship they disabled was being systematically looted for information about ship design, weapons technology, defensive systems, and, most critically, fleet deployments throughout the Empire. Sir, his sensor operator called out urgently. Energy spike from the planetary surface. The human guns are charging for firing sequence. Time to impact. 7 minutes, sir. Vexhai looked around his bridge at his crew, seeing his own growing desperation reflected in their faces. The humans had outmaneuvered them tactically, technologically, and strategically. They had turned what should have been a simple conquest into a carefully orchestrated trap. But what disturbed him most of all was the growing realization that this wasn't desperate improvisation by a primitive species. This was the execution of a plan that had been years in the making, crafted by minds that understood warfare on a level the Zephyrians were only beginning to appreciate. Admiral Chun, he said into the communication system, you said you would guarantee safe passage for our crews. What about our ships? Your ships will be studied, reverse-engineered, and incorporated into humanity's defense forces. Consider it the price of aggression against a species you clearly didn't understand. The casual confidence in her voice was perhaps the most unsettling thing of all. The humans weren't just winning this battle. They were already planning for the next war. Sir, Kixtha whispered, what are your orders? Vexhai stared at the tactical display, watching as the countdown timer showed 5 minutes until the planetary guns fired. Around him, the bridge crew waited for orders that could save their lives or preserve their honor, but probably not both. For the first time in his military career, Commander Vexhai of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy was facing an enemy that had outthought him completely. And the most terrifying part was that he suspected this was just the beginning. Commander Vexhai's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the impossible situation his fleet faced. The countdown timer showed 3 minutes until the human planetary guns would fire, and every second brought them closer to a decision that would either save their lives or condemn them to death in the cold vacuum of space. "Sir," Lieutenant Kixta called out urgently, "we're receiving data bursts from our boarding parties that managed to infiltrate the human fighters. You need to see this immediately." The main display shifted to show intelligence gathered from the captured human craft, and what Vexhai saw there made his blood run even colder than before. The human fighters weren't just primitive vessels held together with determination and luck. They were sophisticated weapons platforms designed specifically to counter advanced alien technology. Their pilots, the intelligence officer reported, are not just trained soldiers. According to the data we've intercepted, every human fighter pilot undergoes genetic modification to enhance their reflexes, improve their resistance to G-forces, and increase their spatial reasoning abilities. Genetic modification? Telak vhisperet. But the Galactic Accords forbid military genetic enhancement. It's been outlawed for over a millennium. The humans never signed the Galactic Accords, Kixta pointed out grimly. They weren't invited to. The display showed detailed biological scans of captured human pilots, and the results were startling. Their nervous systems had been enhanced to process information at speeds that approached artificial intelligence levels. Their cardiovascular systems had been modified to function under extreme gravitational stress. Most disturbing of all, their brains showed alterations that allowed them to interface directly with their ship's systems through neural implants. "They've turned themselves into living weapons," Vexhai breathed. "Each pilot is a hybrid of organic intelligence and mechanical systems." But that wasn't the worst revelation waiting for them. As the intelligence data continued to stream in, it became clear that the human modifications went far beyond simple pilot enhancement. The humans had been preparing for interstellar warfare on a scale that defied belief. "Sir," the intelligence officer continued, "according to intercepted communications, the human military operates on what they call the total war doctrine. Every human citizen receives basic military training. Their entire industrial capacity can be converted to weapons production within 72 hours. Their civilian infrastructure is designed with military applications as a primary consideration." "That's impossible," Subcommander Thelake protested. "No civilization can maintain that level of militarization without collapsing economically." The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the human boarders who had infiltrated a Zephyrian cruiser was broadcasting on an open channel, apparently unconcerned about operational security. "This is Sergeant Maria Santos of the Earth Defense Force Special Operations. To any alien forces listening, I want you to understand something about humanity. We don't have a military. We are a military. Every school child learns tactics. Every factory worker knows how to manufacture weapons. Every farmer understands logistics. You're not fighting an army. You're fighting an entire species that has been preparing for war since we first looked up at the stars." The transmission was accompanied by visual feeds from inside the compromised Zephyrian ships, and what the command crew saw there defied all their expectations about human capabilities. The human boarders weren't just accessing computer systems, they were completely rewriting them. Zephyrian technology that had taken centuries to develop was being reverse-engineered and improved upon in real time. "How are they doing that?" Grixmold demanded. "Our systems are quantum encrypted with security protocols that should take years to break." "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're intercepting internal human communications that might explain their capabilities." Apparently, their boarding teams include individuals they call savants, humans with enhanced cognitive abilities focused on specific areas like mathematics, engineering, or computer science. The display showed one such individual, a young human woman whose hands moved over a Zephyrian control interface with impossible speed and precision. As they watched, she bypassed security systems that were considered unbreachable, accessed classified databases, and downloaded terabytes of information in minutes. "She's not just hacking our systems," the intelligence officer said in wonder. "She's improving them. Look at the efficiency ratings. Our own computers are running faster after she's finished with them. This revelation sent a chill through the bridge that had nothing to do with the life support systems. The humans weren't just stealing Zephyrian technology, they were making it better. In the space of a few hours, they had gone from technologically inferior to potentially superior. Sir, Kix the called out, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Chun. She says it's her final offer. Put it through. Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge, but now there was something different about it. Where before there had been professionalism and determination, now there was an edge of something that sounded almost like pity. Commander Vexhai, you have 90 seconds to make your decision. I want you to understand what will happen if you choose to fight rather than surrender. When our planetary guns fire, they will not just destroy your ships. The kinetic projectiles will fragment on impact, creating debris clouds moving at relativistic speeds. That debris will tear through your formation like a chainsaw through paper. The tactical display showed a computer simulation of what would happen when the guns fired, and it was a vision of absolute destruction. Not only would the primary targets be vaporized instantly, but the secondary effects would destroy everything within a vast radius. But that's not the worst part, Chun continued relentlessly. The worst part is that this battle is being broadcast live throughout human space. Every human colony, every human ship, every human citizen is watching this engagement. They're learning from it. By the time your empire sends another fleet, humanity will have improved its defenses by orders of magnitude. She's bluffing, Thelake said desperately. No species could advance that quickly. The answer came from their own intelligence reports. Human settlements throughout their local star cluster were indeed receiving real-time battle data and already implementing improvements based on lessons learned. Mining colonies were installing improvised weapons. Trade vessels were being retrofitted for military service. Most ominously, human research facilities were working around the clock to analyze captured Zephyrian technology. Sir, the sensor operator called out, 30 seconds to firing sequence. All human ships are moving to minimum safe distance from the impact zone. Vexhai watched as the human fleet executed a precise withdrawal maneuver that left the Zephyrian ships alone in what was clearly a carefully calculated kill zone. The coordination required for such a maneuver spoke to a level of tactical planning and execution that he was only beginning to appreciate. Commander, came Admiral Chen's voice one final time. You have 10 seconds to signal surrender or my guns will fire. Choose. The bridge fell silent except for the countdown timer. 9, 8, 7. Sir, Kix the whispered urgently. Orders? 6, 5, 4. Vexhai looked at his crew, seeing fear and uncertainty in faces that had never known defeat. The Zephyrian Empire had been supreme in the galaxy for over 2,000 years. They had never encountered a species that could challenge them militarily, much less outmaneuver them so completely. 3, 2. All ships, Vexhai said into the fleet communications system, his voice heavy with defeat, stand down weapons, and prepare for surrender. The countdown timer reached 0, but the planetary guns did not fire. A wise decision, Commander, Admiral Chen's voice returned. All Zephyrian vessels, power down your weapon systems, and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that fails to comply immediately will be destroyed. As the human ships moved in to accept the surrender, Vexhai noticed something that chilled him to his very core. The humans weren't celebrating their victory. They were working with calm, professional efficiency to secure their prisoners and analyze capture technology. This wasn't a desperate victory against overwhelming odds. It was the successful completion of a carefully planned operation. Sir, Kix the reported quietly, boarding shuttles are approaching. They're requesting permission to dock. Granted, Vexhai said wearily. The first human to board the Eternal Dominion was Admiral Chen herself, accompanied by what appeared to be a technical team carrying scanning equipment. She was a small woman by Zephyrian standards, barely reaching Vexhai's lowest shoulder, but she moved with the confidence of someone who had never doubted the outcome of this engagement. Commander Vexhai, she said in accented but fluent Zephyrian, I'm Admiral Sarah Chun, commanding officer of the Earth Defense Force. You and your crew are now prisoners of war under the protection of the Geneva Convention and its interstellar amendments. You speak our language, Vexhai observed. Of course. We've been monitoring your communications for 3 years. We know more about your empire than you might expect. As if to demonstrate her point, Chen pulled out a small device that projected a holographic map of Zephyrian space. But this wasn't just any map. It showed current fleet disposition, supply lines, political tensions, and economic weak points throughout the empire. This is impossible, Thalake breathed. This intelligence is classified at the highest levels. How could you possibly? Commander Thalake, Chen interrupted. You're thinking like a civilized being. You assume intelligence gathering requires infiltration, bribery, or sophisticated espionage. You're forgetting that humans specialize in thinking outside the box. She gestured to one of her technical team members, who began connecting scanning equipment to the Eternal Dominion's computer systems. For the past 3 years, we've been intercepting and analyzing every communication signal that passes through this system. Your empire's quantum encryption is impressive, but it has one fatal flaw. It assumes the people trying to break it are using conventional methods. What methods did you use? Vexhai asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Brute force mathematics performed by our most advanced artificial intelligences, combined with intuitive leaps made by our human cryptographers. Your people designed security systems to resist logical attacks. They never considered the possibility of illogical ones. As Chen spoke, her technical team was downloading everything from the Zephyrian ship's databases. But more disturbing was what they were uploading in return. Vexhai could see human programs integrating themselves into Zephyrian systems, not to damage them, but to improve their efficiency and extract even more information. You're not just stealing our technology, he realized. You're making it work better so you can steal more of it. Now you're beginning to understand, Chun said with what might have been approval. Humans don't just adapt to challenges, Commander. We improve them. Every Zephyrian ship we capture becomes a platform for developing better countermeasures. Every piece of technology we analyze makes us stronger. The implications of this hit Vexhai like a physical blow. The humans weren't just winning this battle. They were using it as a learning experience to prepare for future conflicts. Every Zephyrian defeat would make humanity more dangerous. Sir, one of the human technical specialists called out, we've accessed their fleet communication protocols. We now have complete access to all Zephyrian military communications within a 50 light-year radius. Excellent, Chen replied. Begin analysis of fleet movements and tactical doctrines. I want to know everything about their military capabilities before we send our report to Earth Command. Report. Vexhai asked, Commander, did you really think this was the only human fleet? This system contains less than 5% of humanity's total military capacity. The real fleet is currently preparing to visit every Zephyrian installation within 100 light years. The blood drained from Vexhai's face as he realized the scope of what was happening. This hadn't been a desperate defensive action by a primitive species. It had been a carefully planned first strike by a civilization that had been preparing for interstellar war longer than anyone had imagined. You're going to invade the Empire, he whispered. Invade is such an ugly word, Chen replied. We prefer preemptive peacekeeping. Your empire made one critical error, Commander. You assumed that because we were younger and smaller, we were weaker. You forgot that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who has nothing left to lose. As human technicians continued their systematic looting of Zephyrian technology and intelligence, Vexhai began to understand the true magnitude of his civilization's mistake. They hadn't just underestimated humanity's military capabilities, they had completely misunderstood the nature of human psychology. The humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to make sure they would never have to fight the same enemy twice. And now, with access to Zephyrian technology, intelligence, and tactical doctrines, they were preparing to do exactly that. 3 weeks after the surrender of Commander Vexhai's fleet, the Zephyrian Empire received news that would shake their civilization to its very foundation. The reports came from the outer colonies first, transmitted by automated emergency beacons before the communication networks went dark. High Admiral Tyxvac stood in the central command chamber of the Zephyrian Home Fleet, his 4 arms trembling as he processed the incoming intelligence reports. Each message told the same impossible story. Human fleets were appearing throughout Zephyrian space, not as raiding parties or reconnaissance forces, but as fully coordinated military expeditions that seemed to know exactly where to strike. "Show me the tactical overview," he commanded, his voice betraying none of the growing panic he felt in his core. The holographic display materialized above the command platform, showing a three-dimensional map of Zephyrian space that was rapidly filling with red indicators. Each red symbol represented a human attack, and there were far too many of them to be explained by conventional military logistics. "Sir," reported Intelligence Director Kixal, "we've confirmed human fleet actions at 17 different star systems simultaneously. The attacks appear to be coordinated, but the speed of their advance suggests they're using technology we don't understand." "Explain." "The human fleets are arriving at their targets within hours of each other across distances that should take weeks to traverse, even with our fastest ships. Either they've developed faster-than-light communication and coordination capabilities that exceed our own, or they've been positioning forces throughout our territory for months without our knowledge." The second possibility was even more terrifying than the first. It would mean that while the Zephyrian Empire had been laughing at human primitiveness, the humans had been conducting a massive intelligence and infiltration operation that had gone completely undetected. "What are they targeting?" HFY demanded. "That's where it gets disturbing, sir. They're not attacking our military installations or population centers. They're targeting our industrial complexes, research facilities, and communication hubs. They're systematically dismantling our technological infrastructure." The display zoomed in on one of the attack systems, showing the aftermath of a human strike. The orbital shipyards were intact, but empty, their entire inventory of vessels and equipment apparently confiscated. The research stations were undamaged, but stripped of all data and personnel. Most ominously, the communication arrays had been modified rather than destroyed, suggesting the humans wanted to monitor Zephyrian communications rather than simply disrupt them. "They're not trying to conquer us," TYXVAC realized with growing horror. "They're trying to understand us." The implications of this strategy were staggering. A conventional military conquest would leave the Zephyrian Empire weakened, but intact, capable of eventual recovery and retaliation. But a systematic theft of their technological base would leave them permanently inferior to human capabilities. "Sir," called out the fleet communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies." "The source appears to be everywhere, sir. They're broadcasting from every capture communication array simultaneously." "Put it through." The voice that filled the command chamber was not Admiral Chen's, but that of another human whose tone carried an authority that transcended military rank. "Citizens and leaders of the Zephyrian Empire, this is President Elena Rodriguez of the United Earth Government. I want to address the current situation between our civilizations directly. The fact that the human leader was speaking to the entire empire simultaneously demonstrated a level of communications control that should have been impossible to achieve so quickly. 3 weeks ago, your fleet attacked human space under the assumption that we were a primitive species incapable of meaningful resistance. This assumption was based on incomplete intelligence and a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature." TYXVAC gestured for his intelligence staff to begin analyzing the transmission for any useful information about human capabilities or intentions. "You observed our technology and concluded we were inferior because our methods differed from yours. You failed to recognize that different does not mean defective. Human engineering emphasizes adaptability over sophistication, innovation over tradition, and pragmatism over elegance." The holographic display shifted to show images of human industrial facilities, and what TYXVAC saw there challenged everything he thought he understood about technological development. The human factories were indeed primitive compared to Zephyrian automated systems, but they were also incredibly versatile. The same facilities that produced civilian goods could apparently be reconfigured to manufacture military hardware within hours. "More importantly," President Rodriguez continued, "you underestimated human psychology. You expected us to respond to aggression with either submission or conventional resistance. You did not anticipate that we would respond with systematic preparation for total warfare." The display now showed the scope of human military preparation, and it was breathtaking in its comprehensiveness. Every human colony had been militarized. Every civilian ship had been converted for combat roles. Every human citizen had received military training. The entire species had transformed itself into a military organization in the space of 3 years. The fleets currently operating in your territory are not invasion forces. They are research expeditions. We are studying your technology, your tactics, your culture, and your psychology. We are learning everything there is to know about your civilization so that we can ensure this conflict never happens again. Sir, Whispered Intelligence Director Kixel, our deep space sensors are detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the direction of human space. Multiple fleets, each one larger than the force that attacked our outer colonies. How many ships? Conservative estimate? Over 10,000 vessels, sir. And they're using some form of faster-than-light travel we've never encountered before. The transmission from President Rodriguez continued relentlessly. You are probably wondering how we achieved such rapid technological advancement. The answer is simple. We learned from you. Every Zephyrian ship we captured, every database we accessed, every piece of equipment we analyzed has contributed to human understanding of advanced technology. The holographic display showed human research facilities where captured Zephyrian technology was being systematically reverse-engineered and improved upon. But more disturbing were the images of human scientists working alongside what appeared to be willing Zephyrian prisoners, collaborating on projects that combined the best of both civilizations' knowledge. Many of your people have chosen to cooperate with our research efforts. They have come to understand what your leadership apparently has not, that humanity offers partnership, not domination. We are not interested in ruling your empire. We are interested in ensuring that your empire never again threatens innocent civilizations. This revelation sent shock waves through the Zephyrian command staff. The idea that their own people might be voluntarily assisting the enemy was almost incomprehensible. Sir, reported the fleet tactical officer, we're receiving requests for orders from all our remaining installations. They want to know whether to fight or negotiate. What forces do we have available for defense of the home system? HFY demanded. Approximately 40% of our total fleet strength, sir. But based on the human performance in the outer systems, our tactical analysts estimate we have less than a 15% probability of successful defense. The mathematics of the situation were stark and unforgiving. The humans had demonstrated technological superiority, tactical innovation, and strategic preparation that exceeded anything in Zephyrian experience. Worse yet, they were learning and improving with every engagement. Sir, the communications officer called out urgently. We're receiving a direct transmission addressed to you personally from the human fleet approaching our system. From Admiral Chun? No, sir. From someone identifying herself as Fleet Admiral Jessica Torres, commanding the Human Expeditionary Force. HFY had heard that name before. According to their intelligence files, Torres was considered one of humanity's most brilliant military strategists, a veteran of their species' numerous internal conflict who had supposedly been instrumental in developing human space warfare doctrine. Put her through. The image that appeared on the main display showed a human female in military uniform, standing on what was obviously the bridge of a vessel whose design incorporated both human and Zephyrian technology. The implications of this hybrid construction were immediately apparent to everyone in the command chamber. High Admiral HFY, Torres began without preamble. I'm approaching your system with a fleet of 8,000 ships. My orders are to secure the Zephyrian homeworld and government facilities for integration into the human defense network. Integration? HFY managed to ask. The age of independent spacefaring civilizations is ending, Admiral. Humanity has determined that the galaxy is too dangerous a place for separate species to maintain separate military forces. From now on, all advanced civilizations will contribute to a unified defense structure under human coordination. The audacity of this statement was staggering. The humans weren't just conquering the Zephyrian Empire, they were proposing to reorganize galactic civilization itself. You cannot be serious, HFY protested. There are dozens of species more advanced than humanity. The crystalline hierarchies, the void whisperers, the machine consciousness, are all currently receiving similar messages, Torres interrupted. Humanity has decided that the survival of intelligent life requires centralized coordination of military resources. Species that cooperate will retain autonomy in all non-military matters. Species that resist will be absorbed entirely. The casual way she discussed the conquest of civilizations that had existed for millions of years sent chills through every being in the command chamber. But what was truly terrifying was that she seemed to have the military capability to back up her threats. Admiral, HFY said carefully, "Surely you understand that what you're proposing is impossible. No single species can coordinate the military forces of an entire galaxy." Torres smiled, and there was something in that expression that suggested she knew something he didn't. "Admiral, you're still thinking in terms of species-based organization. Humanity stopped thinking that way 3 years ago when we first detected signs of your empire. We've been recruiting individuals from every civilization we've encountered, not based on their species' loyalty, but based on their commitment to galactic security." The display behind her shifted to show the bridge of her ship more clearly, and HFY saw something that shook him to his core. The crew was mixed. There were humans, yes, but there were also representatives of at least 6 other species, including several that looked suspiciously like Zephyrians. "The officer of my tactical station is Commander Hexdal, formerly of your own fleet. The science officer is Dr. Kylie Morrison from the human colony of New Geneva. My chief engineer is Master Craftsman HFY of the crystalline hierarchies. They work together because they share a common goal, preventing conflicts like the one your empire started 3 weeks ago." "Impossible," Kixel whispered. "Hexdal would never betray the empire." But the evidence was right there on the display. A Zephyrian officer serving aboard a human warship, apparently by choice. "Admiral HFY," Torres continued, "I'm going to give you the same choice we've given every other military leader we've encountered. Join the Human Defense Network voluntarily, and retain command of your forces under our overall coordination. Refuse, and we will remove you from command and offer the same choice to your subordinates. And if everyone refuses, then we will recruit individuals from your population directly and build new military organizations from the ground up. The galaxy will be unified under human coordination, Admiral. The only question is whether that happens with your cooperation or despite your resistance." The transmission ended, leaving the Zephyrian command staff in stunned silence. Everything they had believed about human capabilities, human intentions, and human limitations had proven to be completely wrong. "Sir," the sensor operator called out weakly, "the human fleet has arrived at the edge of our system. They're demanding permission to dock with our command stations." HFY looked around his command chamber at officers who had served the Zephyrian Empire their entire lives, seeing his own confusion and uncertainty reflected in their faces. Everything they had known about warfare, about politics, about the nature of galactic civilization itself, had changed in the space of 3 weeks. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he was beginning to suspect that the humans were right. Perhaps the age of independent civilizations really was ending. Perhaps the galaxy really did need unified coordination to survive whatever challenges lay ahead. The question was whether he had the courage to admit that the enemies he had underestimated were actually offering salvation disguised as conquest. 6 months after the fall of the Zephyrian homeworld, former High Admiral HFY stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Starship Unity, watching his construction crews put the finishing touches on humanity's most ambitious project yet, the Galactic Defense Network headquarters, a massive space station that dwarfed anything previously built by any single civilization. The irony of his situation was not lost on him. He now held the rank of Regional Defense Coordinator in the Human Defense Network, commanding a fleet that included ships from 7 different species. His former enemies had not only spared his life, but had offered him a position of responsibility that exceeded his previous authority in many ways. "Still having second thoughts?" asked a familiar voice behind him. HFY turned to see Fleet Admiral Jessica Torres approaching, her expression showing the kind of professional respect that had characterized all his interactions with human leadership. Despite having conquered his civilization, the humans treated captured Zephyrian officers as colleagues rather than prisoners. "Not second thoughts," HFY replied carefully. "More like philosophical confusion. I'm trying to understand how humanity accomplished in 6 months what most civilizations would consider impossible." Torres moved to stand beside him at the observation window, her gaze following his toward the construction crews that worked with impossible efficiency to complete the massive project. "The secret," she said, is that we didn't try to do it alone. Look at those construction teams. HFY focused on the workers outside, and you began to understand what she meant. The crews were mixed-species teams where human engineering knowledge combined with Zephyrian manufacturing expertise, crystalline hierarchy materials science, and Void Whisper dimensional manipulation techniques. Each species contributed their greatest strengths while the humans provided coordination and strategic vision. You're not conquering us, HFY realized aloud. You're recruiting us. Now you're beginning to understand the human approach to problem-solving, Torres replied. We don't see other species as enemies to be defeated or subjects to be ruled. We see them as potential allies whose unique capabilities can be combined with our own to achieve objectives that none of us could accomplish alone. The observation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the station's command center. Admiral Torres, we're receiving priority signals from deep space monitoring stations. Long-range sensors have detected movement in a void between. Both officers exchanged glances. The void between was the name given to the empty space between galactic clusters, a region that should have been completely devoid of intelligent life. Movement there could mean only one thing. Something was approaching from outside their galaxy entirely. I need to get to the command center, Torres said. Would you like to observe? This is exactly the kind of situation the defense network was designed to handle. HFY followed her through corridors that bustled with activity from beings of multiple species, all working together with an efficiency that still amazed him. The command center itself was a marvel of integrated technology, combining the best systems from every member civilization into a unified whole that exceeded the capabilities of any individual component. Report, Torres commanded as they entered. Ma'am, responded the duty officer, a crystalline hierarchy individual whose crystalline structure pulsed with data flows. Our deep space arrays had detected a fleet of unknown vessels approaching from intergalactic space. Configuration and technology signatures don't match anything in our databases. The main display showed sensor readings from the approaching fleet, and even HFY could see that these vessels represented technology far beyond anything their galaxy had ever produced. The ships were enormous, their energy signatures off the scale, and they were traveling at velocities that shouldn't have been possible. Time to arrival? Torres asked. Approximately 72 hours at current velocity, ma'am. Any response to communication attempts? Negative. They appear to be scanning our galaxy systematically, but they're not responding to any of our signals. Torres studied the tactical display with the same calm professionalism she had shown when conquering the Zephyrian Empire. But HFY could see tension in her posture that suggested she understood the magnitude of the threat they were facing. Alert all Defense Network commands, she ordered. Implement Contingency Protocol 7. All fleet elements are to report to predetermined assembly points immediately. Ma'am, the crystalline officer responded. Protocol 7 requires unanimous approval from all species representatives. Which you have, came a voice from the communication system. The display showed President Rodriguez, but she was flanked by representatives of every major civilization in the galaxy. The Galactic Council has voted to grant humanity full emergency authority to coordinate our response to this threat. HFY watched in amazement as the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy voluntarily submitted to human coordination in the face of an external threat. It was exactly the scenario that humanity had predicted when they first proposed the defense network. Admiral Torres, President Rodriguez continued, you are hereby authorized to deploy the full resources of the Galactic Defense Network as you see fit. May the wisdom of all our species guide your decisions. The transmission ended, and Torres turned to address the mixed species command staff that had assembled in the center. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of all classifications, she began. 6 months ago, most of you would have considered it impossible for your civilizations to work together on this scale. Today, we're about to prove that cooperation between species isn't just possible, it's essential for survival. She gestured to the main display, which now showed the disposition of defense network forces throughout the galaxy. The scope of the combined fleet was staggering. Over 50,000 ships representing the military might of dozens of civilizations, all operating under unified command. The approaching fleet represents technology that exceeds our individual capabilities, Torres continued. But they've made the same mistake that the Zephyrian Empire made 6 months ago. They've assumed that technological superiority guarantees victory. What mistake is that? Asked Commander Hexdow, the former Zephyrian officer who now served as Torres' chief of staff. They've underestimated the power of cooperation, Torres replied. They see a galaxy full of separate civilizations competing for resources and territory. They don't see what we've built here. The display shifted to show the integration of technologies and capabilities across species lines. Human strategic thinking combined with Zephyrian manufacturing capacity. Crystalline hierarchy materials science, enhanced by Void Whisperer dimensional manipulation. Machine consciousness computational power, coordinating with organic intuition and creativity. Each of our civilizations developed along different paths, Torres explained. We each have unique strengths and unique blind spots. Separately, we're vulnerable. Together, we're something that has never existed before in galactic history. What do you mean? HFY asked. We're not just an alliance of convenience, Torres said. We're a new form of civilization entirely. A hybrid culture that combines the best characteristics of dozens of species into something greater than the sum of its parts. The demonstration that followed was breathtaking in its scope. Human commanders coordinated overall strategy, while Zephyrian officers managed logistics and manufacturing. Crystalline hierarchy scientists provided advanced materials and energy systems, while Void Whisperers manipulated space-time to enable faster-than-light communication across vast distances. Machine consciousness entities processed vast amounts of tactical data, while organic beings provided the intuitive leaps that artificial intelligence couldn't achieve. Sir, reported the tactical officer, all defense network fleets have reached their assembly points. We have full coordination across the galaxy. Time to intercept the incoming fleet? 36 hours, ma'am. Torres nodded and turned to address HFY directly. Admiral, I want you to understand something. When this engagement begins, you'll be commanding ships and crews from 6 different species, including many humans who 6 months ago would have considered you their enemy. Are you prepared for that responsibility? HFY looked around the command center at beings who had once been members of separate, often hostile civilizations, now working together with perfect coordination. The transformation was so complete that he sometimes forgot there had ever been boundaries between their species. Admiral Torres, he said formally, 6 months ago, I would have died before serving under human command. Today, I can't imagine serving under anyone else. You've shown us what we could become when we stop fighting each other and start fighting for each other. The next 36 hours passed in a whirlwind of preparation and coordination. Fleets moved into position with precision that would have been impossible without the integrated command structure humanity had built. Supply lines that crossed species boundaries operated seamlessly. Most remarkably, strategic planning sessions that included representatives from dozens of civilizations produced unified battle plans without the political conflicts that had historically made such cooperation impossible. When a moment of contact finally came, HFY stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching as sensors revealed the true scale of what they were facing. The intergalactic fleet consisted of vessels that were less ships than mobile space habitats, each one capable of destroying entire star systems. All defense network units. Torres' voice came through the communication system. This is Admiral Torres. The enemy fleet has entered our galaxy. They have not responded to diplomatic overtures. We are now implementing Plan Omega. Plan Omega was humanity's ultimate strategic gambit, a battle plan that used the combined strengths of every member civilization to create tactical possibilities that no single species could have achieved. Zephyrian manufacturing ships began producing customized weapons in real time, based on sensor analysis of enemy defenses. Crystalline hierarchy vessels provided energy and materials that exceeded anything previously possible. Void Whisperers manipulated space-time to enable impossible tactical maneuvers. But the most important element was purely human, the ability to coordinate such diverse capabilities into a unified whole. Human commanders had spent months learning to think in ways that incorporated the strengths and perspectives of dozens of different species. Sir, reported his tactical officer, the enemy fleet is beginning their attack. They're targeting our industrial worlds first. Then, we'll give them something else to think about, HFY replied. All ships, implement Human Doctrine 7, controlled chaos. What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. The Defense Network forces didn't fight like any single civilization would have fought. Instead, they fought like humanity had taught them to fight, with unpredictability, adaptability, and absolute refusal to accept defeat. The battle raged for 6 hours, and when it was over, the intergalactic fleet was in full retreat, their survivors broadcasting surrender signals that the universal translator struggled to interpret. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the enemy fleet commander. They're requesting negotiation." TYXVAC smiled, remembering his own first encounter with human military doctrine. "Put them through. Let's see if they're ready to learn what we learned 6 months ago." As he prepared to speak with beings from beyond the galaxy, TYXVAC reflected on the transformation that humanity had brought to galactic civilization. They hadn't just prevented a war. They had created something entirely new, a community of species that was stronger together than any of them could have been alone. The humans had been right from the beginning. The age of independent civilizations was over. The age of cooperative civilization had begun. And, despite himself, TYXVAC was grateful to have lived to see it.